Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and today we are going to make an awesome pull and pop interactive card. I love this die set. I'm starting with an A2 top folding card base and an A2 panel that I cut from heavyweight white cardstock. Then this is the Fawn pull and pop die set. It's a pretty small die set and you just need these two pieces and then one other die to create that mechanism. Then I have this set from Pink and Main. It is the most adorable Easter stamp set. And I got it in the sale category. So I got the stamps and the dies for $16. I don't know if they still have this one available as a bundle. I will link it if they do, but check out their sale category for sure. This is the Mama Elephant combo rectangle. It creates a scallop pattern in the back and then a panel on the front. So I have cut that from two coordinating colors of cardstock. And then I thought those scallops went nicely with this Sunny Studios scalloped circle mats. And I've cut one of those from pink cardstock. And then I will cut a white circle that fits right inside of those stitched lines using the Waffle Flower nested circle dies. That is maybe one of my most used die sets. Then I have the Into the Woods pattern paperback from Fawn because we're going to use all the things today. So this is the mechanism, and the way it's designed, that pull tab goes from the back to the front of the card, and then you have to cover it up with a panel of cardstock that runs right through the middle of your paper, and I don't like that, right? The way I design cards rarely has anything going right across the middle. Even though there are lots of cute examples, I wanted to give you another way to put this together. So I just glued my pattern paper to my heavyweight white cardstock, and you can see there are two notches that will be cut by this die. So I am placing this with the arrow pointed towards me. That's important because that top notch is longer than the bottom one, and I'm going to tape that to my cardstock right about where I want it. But we're only going to cut the notch on the top. We're not going to cut the bottom one. So I'm laying this in my die cut machine. Any die cut machine will work for this. And I will just put the plates over the top part. It's very forgiving because there's a bunch of space in the middle between the two notches, right? It does not have to be an exact science. So I have one hole right at the top, and I'm going to lay this on the back, right? I flipped it over and I'm drawing a line where that other notch would have been, just as a reference. There is on our long pull tab a score line right in the middle of these wide arms. And so if you watch the Fawn assembly video, and it's a great video, they use a ruler to get to that score line, and I'm just holding down half of it and then folding it in half, and it worked beautifully. I'm pressing that down with my bone folder. My arms got a little misshapen, but it actually doesn't matter. Not something you need to worry about. It's going to be completely hidden. Now there is another score line up towards the top. I'm going to give that just an initial fold, and I will worry about which direction I'm folding it later. I'm going to thread this through the back so that the short arms go through the hole. And then I'm checking my stitch lines to make sure the pretty side is facing up. So I am going to fold that score line so it folds back, and you can see the short arms, they're going to go right up against the notch. For this smaller piece, I've folded it to create a Z. Okay, so each little tab is going a different direction. And I'm going to glue this to my card base right above the notch that we cut out so that that foot has like the toes of it, if that makes sense, pointing towards the opening, right? And I'm not covering up the opening. It's just right up against it. And then I will fold it flat towards me, and the other flap goes back, and then the larger flap gets glued on top of it. Notice those small arms are right up against the opening on our card. So I'm going to show you both. Here's the one on the left that I did, and then on the right you can see the original. This has that notch cut out for the pull tab to slide back through to the front, and near as I can tell, that's really just there to stabilize it. So we're going to stabilize on the back. I have a scrap piece of cardstock. It's about a 1/2 inch, and I am wrapping it around my pull tab. I want it to be loose enough that that pull tab will move, and then I will add my glue and press the longer flap down. okay? And then I'm going to double check it. I'm going to make sure that this is going to move up and down, that I didn't glue that collar to my pull tab, and I will just trim off the extra piece there. We don't need it to be that long. I'm going to slide it back onto my pull tab. Again, I'm just making sure that that moves freely. I will add some glue and I'm going to line it up with that pencil mark where the other notch would have been cut out of my background. I don't actually think that it needs to go exactly there. I think you've got some wiggle room, but this seemed safest. I have used one of the dies in the set to cut like a cover for our pull tab, and it's got a little arrow on it. It's super cute. It's got that stitch detail, and I am checking to see how long it should be. I don't want it to try to slide into the collar, and I don't want it to be visible when I pull the tab all the way down. So I just sort of eyeballed it, and this works out pretty well, even though I end up moving it. My card is larger than A2. I'm hand delivering it. I don't really care, but certainly there is a die in there to cut a notch so that you could cut that pull tab to be exactly at that line, that 5.5-inch line, so it would fit neatly in your envelope. I've glued that down and trimmed off the extra, and now I'm working with that combo rectangle. I'm taking the rectangle piece, it's a stitched rectangle that fits right on top of the scallop pieces, and I'm just setting the die on some white cardstock and marking outside the edges with my pencil because I want to create a background. If I had cut it with the die first, the ink that I blend onto the background will catch in the little stitched lines. It'll be darker there, and I didn't want that. So that's why I'm doing this first. I'm using the cloud stencil from My Favorite Things, and I am just rotating and adding a very pale blue ink from Altenew in a couple layers of clouds. For those of you that have been watching my channel, you know that I'm kind of new at scene building, and this seemed like a pretty quick and easy way to give my little critters some grounding. After I add my clouds, I grabbed my green ink blending tool. These are from Trinity stamps. I really love them. They're easy for me to hold. And I just used whatever ink was left on there. It's probably Perfection from Simon Says Stamp. Then I will bring my die back in and I can line it right up with those pencil lines I made in the corners. You won't see them when I'm done, and I'll run that through my die cutting machine. For the scallop pieces, it is the exact same piece cut twice, but when you rotate the second one 180 degrees, it lines up beautifully. So I use wet glue and then I just press it against a flat surface, and that helps me get each of those scallops nice and even. I have this grass that was in the Easter Peeps set, and the die is backwards. I don't know if that's why it's on sale. Honestly, this isn't a big deal for me, but I definitely wanted to make sure I pointed out. To make this work, I just held my paper up to the light. So I had stamped and colored it, and then I can kind of see through it to line up the die on the back side. I taped it down and ran it through my die cut machine. But then I had the part of the paper that kind of sticks up from the die. That was the front of my cardstock. So I just used my Teflon bone folder and I pressed that down, and you can't even tell. The rest of the dies in that set were totally fine. So I don't know what happened. Certainly, I would still buy this set. I still thought it was a great deal and a super cute set of Easter critters. I want to fit both of these onto my panel, and one of them is going to overhang a little bit. So I added an extra piece of cardstock that I had die cut to the back of each. It's really just the tip of that one bunny ear. But since this panel pops up, you can actually see part of it, just a small part of it from the back. So I thought I'd play it safe. And then I am adding my glue, and I am just adding my critters to my panel. And I'm about done and realize I still need to add my sentiment. So I've grabbed another stamp from this set and I put it in my Misty, and I really like VersaFine Onyx Clear Black ink, except that it stays wet for a while. So I was like, oh, well, I'll just heat emboss it so I don't have to wait. And as I'm pressing it down, I realized I didn't add any anti-static powder. It turned out okay. I had heat set the ink in the background first, or this would have been a hot mess. But you know, the part of your project that you get to and you're like, oh my gosh, this could be it. This could be the moment where I have to start all over. I was so afraid. It worked out okay. At least there's that. So then I'm adding glue, and you can see how beautifully that rectangle fits on there. It makes it look like the scallops are unique little pieces behind there. I just love it so much. So now I'm adding glue to the back of my pop-up panel, and I'm only adding glue in a U shape on the top and the bottom. This mechanism needs a little space. The cardstock needs to be able to bow a bit when you pull it for it to work smoothly. Okay, so I'm only adding glue where those blue lines were, and then I will add that to my card base. I'm using my removable adhesive to line up my larger panel and stick it on here because I want to hide something beneath it, but I want to make sure I can move things if necessary. I love the removable adhesive I use. It's AdTech. I'll link it below. I get it on Amazon. It's cheap, but it works perfectly for this. So then I have my scallop circle, and I want to make sure that everything's going to fit and you're going to be able to see it all. So I'm using a pencil and just marking where my larger panel hits on there. And I've got my eggs, and then I have room for a teeny tiny greeting that says peep peep. And I am going to decorate that circle the same way I did the larger panel. On the left, you can see the one I messed up. That's the one I put the line on. But once I ink blended the clouds, I was like, how am I going to erase this line? It works out. Actually, it ends up really, really helpful. So I will ink blend my clouds and my grass onto a new panel. And then I'll put the original with the pencil line into my Misty and the negative of that circle and line up the peep peep right under that pencil line. Then I will remove it and add in my panel without the pencil line, and I know that I have everything lined up exactly where it needs to go. I'm using Gina K Amalgam Black ink for this. I was so afraid to heat emboss anything else after I forgot the anti-static powder the last time. The Gina K, for me, I usually need to stamp it twice, but I get a really crisp impression, crisper than I do with like my Memento Tuxedo Black, and it dries much faster than the VersaFine. So that seemed a safe place to be at this point in my card making journey. I removed that temporary adhesive with my finger. It's so easy, I'm telling you. And then I will add my glue, and I will just line this up so it's square on my card base. Next, I am adding my eggs to my scallop circle. Originally, I filmed coloring the eggs and the critters and all the images as well, but that video alone was 40 minutes. I mean, unedited, but this just seemed like more efficient use of our time. I just used my Ohuhu alcohol markers, and then I added a little bit of shimmer pen on the eggs to give them a little extra sparkle. Let me know if you'd like to see more coloring videos on the channel. I certainly can do some of that as well. So when it comes to shimmer pens, I like the Tonic Nuvo Aqua Shimmer Pen. This is the glitter gloss. It's like a clear with just a hint of glitter. And I find that it doesn't get clogged for me or dried out, and then I have a hard time starting it without getting a giant like pile of glitter. So now I am lining up that piece underneath my panel, trying to make sure that it's hidden. And I've added a couple pieces of temporary tape so I can get a sense while it's open of where I need to put this, right? I'm just eyeballing it to try to create the same spacing that was there before I put the glue on it. And this works out really, really well. I will just use my little craft pick, and I will remove those pieces of temporary tape, and that finishes our card. It's so cute, you guys. And the pop-up, I mean, this thing is just, there's such a huge pop. I am thrilled. If you know people who have this die set who might like a version of this that means you don't have to have a piece of cardstock running through the middle, please share this video. I really hope that this is helpful. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.